Welcome to High Examine. Today we're going to be taking a look at what we really need to do to have an impact on the climate change situation. So you may have heard of reduce, reuse, recycle, these types of mantras, which are great, but they are not enough to really make a dent in what needs to be done. And we're going to focus on a number of things that make small changes, but they're not enough. And then we'll look at what we really need to do. And what we really need to do is going to involve a number of topics that are not particularly popular. So if you don't like getting bad news, or you don't like those feel good type of situations, you might want to move along. And for the rest of us, let's jump on in. So the Paris Climate Accord is definitely helpful for making progress on emissions, but it's not enough. We definitely need to do more. If everybody did what they're supposed to do, which they're not doing currently, they're not following through. If they did do what they need to do, it would reduce warming only a small amount, and it's not enough to really turn things around. The Green New Deal is a similar situation. It has some great attributes, and we definitely should do things of this nature, but it's not enough. Minimalism, living with nothing. This is a step in the right direction. It definitely reduces your individual carbon footprints, but it is also not enough. Moving into a van, living down by the river, or in this case, the seashore, is not enough either. Helpful, but not necessarily the order of magnitude that we need. Being vegan or vegetarian and enjoying these tasty Impossible burgers is a step in the right direction, but it's not enough. Regardless of the fact that vegans will not be quiet about telling us how much their emissions have been lowered. It's not enough, folks. So we're running short on time, and we've known about this issue for a while now. This is James Hansen. He is one of the most well-known climatologists, and this is him presenting in 1988 to Congress regarding climate change, and he made a prediction as to what would happen. And so far, his predictions have been pretty accurate as to what we're progressing through. So it's been known back to 88 at a level that we could make a case to Congress, and we're talking decades of inaction. And those decades of inaction add up to this curve you're seeing here. This is called the Keeling curve. It has the years across the bottom, and then across the vertical axis is the parts per million of CO2. So each year, more and more CO2, and the ups and downs, the sawtooth nature of it is the seasonal variation, basically plants blooming and then dying off in the northern hemisphere in the fall. The end result is that we have not slowed this curve. So despite the things that we're doing, eating those veggie patties and so on, it's not enough to slow down this curve from growing at the incredible rate that it is. So this is an example of a not so popular idea. We might need to take a break from reproduction. You can see down here, we hit about 1 billion people 200 years ago. And now in the last 200 years, we've jumped from that number of around 1 billion to almost 8 billion. And we're probably, if we're not careful, going to go right past into the double digits, into 10 billion plus. And this has a major impact on the environment, both from a carbon standpoint as well as a number of other environmental issues that naturally arise when you have a species that is growing with no natural predators. So we really need to take a breeder break. And a breeder break is birth control in the water, in short. We basically managed to get ourselves into a situation that we have 8 billion people on the planet with optional birth control. Now we're just going to have to take a break from reproducing. So that means no kids for a while until we get the situation figured out. Again, not a popular idea, but it'll definitely reduce our impact. Renewables. We need wind and solar and storage, et cetera, as soon as possible. These overarching goals of things like 2050 will be on completely renewable energy. That is not sufficient. We're going to need to get this done yesterday. And the sooner we do it, the better off we'll be. And it's going to be tough, though, because the oil industries have a vested interest in delaying this change because they have a lot of sunk costs into the current infrastructure that's focused on fossil fuels. Capitalism. So capitalism has its challenges because it generally is set up that the goal is that the system is open to the free market. There are individuals that make their own self-interest, kind of their own decisions and for their own self-interest. And that system is challenging for sustainability. And then that system got hijacked by corporations. So we ended up, what we have now is a corporate capitalist system where the corporations are not necessarily allowing the free market to be the governing operating system, but have hijacked it in such a way that they have the upper hand. So we really need to step away from capitalism in its entirety and definitely get far, far away from corporate capitalism if we want to buy time. Speaking of buying time and the Keeling curve that we saw earlier, one way to help us get closer to our pre-industrial 280 parts per million is through direct carbon capture. These giant arrays, a big box of fans bolted together the size of a Costco, and you filter the air to capture carbon out of it, and you sequester those carbon filters. And you need millions of these. So this is a large infrastructure challenge, and you have to power these and maintain them and build them in the first place, for that matter, all in a zero carbon way. And that is not easy, but this is a great way to suck the carbon out of the atmosphere such that you can get to a situation where you're not going to experience the peak warming that is now on the horizon. Also, we need a global unified front. We need to function as if there are no borders, because the atmosphere and overall the environment as a whole does not see the Earth as broken up into different regions or countries or states or communities, individuals, etc. It is a situation that requires us to come together as a species. This is not one of our strong suits. We tend to be tribal. We tend to think small, and this is going to require us to make a big leap. And it's going to require that big leap to also involve changes in our culture. The first world in particular is going to have to give some things up and generally try to work with everyone to get us into a position where we can really start to tackle this situation. This is where we are today. We're up in the air. We've had a great time riding the roller coaster. We're at the top of the loop on no track at all and not sure how we're going to land this thing. And this is going to require, in order to have that softer landing, many of the things that have been mentioned previously. These are population, 100% renewables, elimination of capitalism, especially corporate capitalism, direct carbon capture, having a united front, changes to culture. These things all need to be done to have that softer landing. And if we don't have the soft landing, we're potentially going to end up in a situation where things are ungovernable. And ungovernable means today doesn't look like tomorrow. Things will be different. You won't be able to do and get the things that you want. And things like avocado toast, having time to go to the beach and pick up trash, wearing bling like Mr. T, having high bandwidth Wi-Fi for gaming, and maybe even having a Tesla and electric car is great, but we might have to go back to bicycles or tennis shoes to really make this more sustainable. Trips to Hawaii are out, GDP is down, cell phones may be a thing of the past, and this, of course, would lead to a reduction in Tinder. So these are the types of things that we're going to have to do, because instead of doing this, we're going to have to really go after those previously mentioned issues. So, like James Brown, we're going to have to be the hardest working people, not in his case, which was in show business, we're going to have to be the hardest working people in sustainability to really get things moving in the proper direction. Thanks again for joining me. This has been another episode of High Examine. Take care.